we're starting seated. Sit however you're comfortable. You can sit on the block, you can sit on your bolster, you can sit, you get on my block. You can have the feet flat on the floor, knees bent. You can have the legs out straight in front of you if that feels comfortable. You can cross the legs. You can do well, you can kind of fold them in, but they're not actually crossed. I'm going to start here. The choice is yours, wherever you feel comfortable. You know, you can even come there. They don't have to be crossed, you can let the knees fall out. So you have options of how you wish to sit. Oh, let me get comfy. And then for the class, I'm going to need another block, a yoga strap or a stretchy band. If you haven't got those, dressing gown cord, a belt, just something that will allow your arms to be quite wide. And then the block, something that will go between your elbows, keep the elbows about shoulder width. Block, Tupperware tub, if you've got something about that size. If not, if you've got a kid's football or a ball, it's a little bit narrow, but you'll still get the effect. It'll probably be a little bit more intense if it's a little bit narrower. So there's all the equipment that we might need. The balls escape that we go with the block anyway. So we want to start, you want to feel settled, you know. We've arrived wherever we may be for this practice. You know, we've taken that time to get there. You know, we've thought about all the things that we might need for this practice. So now we take the space to go inward. You know, to connect with our body, with ourself, because that's where the practice is. You know, it's in here, it's with the self, with the body. So take a little bit of space to settle into the body. And notice how it feels. Does it like sitting down on the floor? Is it maybe not quite so happy? In that you need to be comfortable, so you know, an extra block. You might choose to sit on a chair actually, that's absolutely fine for this. But we settle into the space of ourselves. And notice the sitting bones. Notice the spine. Lift into the crown of the head. Shoulders relaxed, arms relaxed. Let the hands rest wherever they feel comfortable. And then become aware of the breath. Take a swallow, and our aim is to nose breathe throughout this practice. That's the aim, that's not we must, but the aim, can we nose breathe throughout the practice? So as we come into awareness of that nose breathing, give yourself a hug, bring the hands down onto the lower edges of the ribcage. Give yourself a hug. You know, hook the hands into those lower parts of the rib cage. Can you breathe into the hands? Breathe into that hug. A few breaths. Breathing into that hug, breathing into the hands. Being aware of the effect of the breath on the rib cage. And if we can connect that lower edge of the rib cage with the breath. One more breath here. As you exhale, release. Release the hands, release the arms. So keep an awareness of the breath as we practice. We're going to start by rolling the shoulders. As we roll the shoulders, notice, see if you can notice, and see if you can tune in to the shoulder blades sliding round on the back of the rib cage. You know, it's not just moving this, you know, circling the joint, the shoulder blades moving around on the back of the rib cage as we move the shoulders. Can you feel that? Let that settle and change direction. Same thing. Moving those shoulders. Can you feel the shoulder blades sliding around on the back of the rib cage? One more. Let that settle. How do the shoulders feel? Pop the hands onto the front of the shoulders. Now we're going to add a little bit of movement into that joint as well. I'm going to bring the elbows together. Circle the elbows. So now we're getting into the joint as well. Click, pop, fizz. Have we got shoulder joints? Smooth shoulder joints? Oh, or have we got cogs? Maybe with a few missing teeth. So all the movements that we do, sometimes we might find some of them challenging. They shouldn't be painful. We don't move into pain. We'll reduce the movement if there is any pain. Maybe get that area checked out. So maybe challenging, but never painful. Next time the elbows come forward, could you change direction? Yeah, and we're feeling the shoulder joint moving. Can you still tune into the shoulder blades moving round on the back of the rib cage? One more. Now I feel quite settled in this position. If you kind of been sat and you go, oh, I need to change the legs, need to change slightly, that's fine. Change the legs, change the seated position a little. We still want to be seated, but you can change that if you feel that you need to for the legs. We're going to go into broken cactus. So we're going to bend one arm, 90-degree bend in the elbow, aiming for the elbow to be about shoulder height, and then exactly the opposite on the other side. So the other hand points down, 90-degree bend elbow. If we look to the raised hand, and as you breathe out, you're going to swap the arms and turn the head. And then breath in, and breath out. So breath out one way, breath in the other. Internal and external rotation of those upper arm bones in the shoulder joint. Move with the breath. Aim for that breath in and out through the nose. Are we getting shoulders? Couple more. Did I say a couple? Well, a couple more. One more. And release. Now I have shoulders. Allow yourself to notice that. Connect with that feeling, that sensation in the shoulders. Then from here, I want you to, if you're sat on a block or sat on a chair or you're on a bolster, you do need to come onto the floor for this. We're going to take the legs out in front and we're going to tip the arms back. So this one you do need to be on the floor. Hands wherever feels comfortable. Fingers back, fingers out. As we move, you'll probably find that sweet spot for the hands. That's fine. We're going to start moving the spine and the shoulders. So as you breathe out, allow the spine to flex, let it sag back towards the floor. And as it does, let the shoulders move forward. Look down, look towards the belly, look between the legs. And then as you start to breathe in, start to lift the breastbone, lift the front of the body, roll onto the sitting bones. So we are reversing that curve in the spine. Look upwards. Squeeze the shoulders together behind you. And then a breath out and we find that flexion. Let the shoulders come forward. Move at a pace that feels right for you. If we think breath in to start the extension, the looking up phase, and breath out to start the flexion. So as we flex, we protract the shoulder blades, create space in the upper back. And as we extend, we retract the shoulder blades, draw them together, like they're squeezing closer to the spine. One more each way. So we're going to finish with an extension, a retraction of the shoulder blades. I like that. Oof. Find a sweet spot. So there isn't flexion, there isn't extension, we're somewhere in the middle and the shoulder blades are not squeezing together but they're not pulling apart. We're going to try and do that with the shoulders but without moving the spine now. So can you bring the shoulders forwards, feel the shoulder blades open up and create more space in the upper back. And then slide the shoulder blades together. Yeah? Less space in the upper back, more space in the chest. Bring the shoulders forwards, shoulder blades open. Squeeze them together. We're getting those the shoulder girdle moving. And now we have a little bit of weight in that because we're leaning back into the hands. Really lean as much as feels comfortable for the wrists. But can we move those shoulders, that shoulder girdle, those shoulder blades? We're going to finish with the shoulder blades squeezing towards each other, retraction, and then release. From here, we need to give the arms a little rest. Sometimes it gets a little bit heavy on the elbows, so the elbows move. Free the elbows up. Some finger flicks to help to free out the wrists, and then bring the elbows together, the hands together. And it's that snaky wristy thing. Just letting the wrists roll around each other. And then from here we're going to go into all fours. You want to spread the hands. Hands going to be a little bit forwards of the shoulders. Looking for the knees under the hips. I nearly said knees over the hips. They need to be under for this. Wrist circles. Stay back a little to start with. Keep the circle small to start with. Notice how the wrists feel. Are they happy about that? Could you make the circle bigger? Or do you need to stay with those smaller circles to keep the wrists happier? It's not about how far you go, it's about how happy the parts of the body are with that. Challenge is okay, discomfort isn't. And then change direction. And when we change them, start small. Start further back. Let the movement grow. Does it feel different to go one way to the other? And then settle over the wrists. So this little section, I'm hoping that you can stay on those flat hands for this section, so we can increase the tolerance for the wrists for this weight bearing. If the wrists are uncomfortable, you can always do thumbs up and go onto the knuckles. Flatten out the wrists, that's fine, you'll still be able to do the move from there. Or if you've got two blocks, you can always hook the fingers over the end of the block. Sometimes that helps, just take some pressure out of the back of the wrist. Push the floor away. Think of lengthening the spine out through the crown of the head, out through the tailbone, like trying to reach out either side of the room. Keep the arms straight. Lower the chest. Squeeze the shoulder blades together. Push the floor away. So rhomboid presses. Chest gets lower, shoulder blades go closer to the spine. We push the floor away, chest lifts, shoulder blades open out. So we're sliding the shoulder blades around the barrel of the rib cage. And now we're doing that in a more weighted way. We have the body weight and gravity working with us. Repeat several times, see if you can get those shoulder blades moving, that shoulder girdle wanting to move. Try not to flex or extend the spine, trying to keep the spine neutral. Just one more. Push the floor away, and we're going to come off the wrist just to give them the wrists a rest, the wrists a rest. Finger flicks again. Now this next bit, if you've kind of gone, I've done that bit on the wrist, but I don't think I will go back on them again. The next bit you can do from the elbows. That's absolutely fine. So you can go down onto the elbows for the next bit. I'm going to go straight on the wrists. Again, if you want to, you can, but otherwise you can go down to the elbows for this one, if that feels better. And I'm going to do some snake jakey. So we give the wrists a little bit of reprieve. Now the choice is yours. Are you going to go to the elbows? You're going to go on the wrists. On the wrists. I want you to push the floor away. So armpits of power. You're going to push the floor away and imagine you're trying to rip the mat in two. So it's like you're kind of going like that with the hands, like you're trying to rip the mat in two. So that will give you that armpits of power. You'll feel strong around the shoulder girdle. I want you to step back with one leg and then the other. But then I want you to lower the knees there. So we get a knee plank. We've come out of that all four position. Keep the lower ribs contained. So think of keeping the lower ribs tucked into the body. Could you do 3 rhomboid presses there? 2, 3. Could you straighten the legs and do 3 rhomboid presses there? Keep the ribs tucked into the body. 1, 2, 3. My elbows bent there. Wherever you are, whether the knees are down or you're in that full plank, now imagine you're pulling the hands and the feet together. Keep pushing the floor away. Keep ripping the mat into. Armpits of power and sneaky core. Smiling. 3, 2, 1. Lower the knees. Whew. Come off the wrists. If you was on the wrist, finger flicks. If you was on the elbows, you might want to rub the elbows. Finger flicks. I like that. It really helps to take away any of that kind of residual tension if there was any build up in the wrists. And then elbows together. And that snaky thing. So just that one plank for now. We will revisit in a little while. We're going to come back seated or kneeling. I'm going to kneel this time, but seated or kneeling. Again, you can use your block if you've got a bolster. If you prefer to sit on a chair, that's fine. If you sat on a chair to start with. So the block. I'm going to put it on its middle height to then sit on so I can kneel. So I'm not sat onto the back of my heels and kind of squashing down into the ankles. The block is holding me. But use it however you're comfortable. The main thing I want is to kind of cut out as many joints in the lower body. So I want us to be sat, to have the sitting bones onto something, if we can. Whether that's a chair, a bolster or a block, doesn't matter. Or you might sit straight onto the floor. That's fab too. We need our other block. Or if you've got a ball, or if you've chosen a Tupperware tub. Whatever you've got. And we're going to put the excuse me, we're going to put the block, I'm going to call it the block, whatever it is, the block between the forearms but quite close to the wrists. We're going to keep a 90-degree bend in the elbows, so it's like we're holding that block in front of us with a 90-degree bend in the elbows. Push outwards with the thumbs and inwards with the elbows. And we want to keep that throughout. With the breath in, start the lift, keep breathing as you lift. How far can you lift that block? Keep the bend in the elbows, keep squeezing the elbows in, keep pushing the thumbs out, and then release. And I want you to repeat several times in your own time. Now is what we're looking to not happen. Let me turn around with the block. We're looking to keep the lower ribs tucked into the body. So as we go, we're looking to lift. And there is a point where it starts to become quite challenging. And we might do this. We might let the ribs pop out and we tip back. So the shoulder hasn't actually done anymore. We've just leant back through the spine. So as we lift and we hit that, that's what we're going. Ooh, we might want the spine to help out. Think of keeping those front ribs pulled down into the body. So it helps to keep the spine in a nice neutral. Oh, and release. A couple more repetitions in your own time. With that in mind, those ribs, keeping the ribs down. So we're mobilising the shoulders with shoulder flexion. But this feels quite a powerful way to do that. I know we're looking to, again, sneaky core, we're keeping those ribs down. We're making that centre body work while we look for shoulder flexion to get that arm to extend. Just one more. Short rest, you know, might want to wriggle the shoulders about. A little bit of time to think and process what was happening. Then we are going to go again with this, but we're going to put the block between the elbows. This sometimes increases the intensity. It stops us from being able to kind of let the elbows flare out a little. We have to be more deliberate. We have to be deliberate about keeping the elbows in. Because we have to keep hold of the block, the tub, the bowl, whatever it is. So between the elbows this time. And pick up. Push it in with the elbows and out. Thumbs. Keep the ribs down. Breath in. Start the lift, but keep breathing. It might take more than that breath in. Keep the ribs down. Think of keeping the spine as neutral as possible. Release. And repeat. Oh, I always find this, because we've lowered the block, it feels like we're not going as far because the block is already lower down and it just doesn't go as far overhead. So we lift. We bring it down. And repeat at a pace that feels right for you. Rest if you need to. This space is for this exercise. Working on that shoulder flexion with a little bit of sneaky core in there because we're keeping the ribs down. Keep pushing in with the elbows, out with the thumbs. So again, we're creating these armpits of power, this strength around the shoulder girdle while we're asking for that shoulder flexion. Looking after our shoulders, helping to keep them healthy and give them a healthy yet supportive ranges of movement. This is the last one. And release. We will need the blocks again. pop them to one side, and I want you to come back into all fours. So we come back to all fours. Now this time is what we're going to look. We're going to look if we can keep the hips over the knees. So we don't want to swing back. We don't want the hips to start to lean forwards. So with this, we're going to walk out with the hands. Now this same rule of keeping the ribs tucked into the body applies. Because again, we're going to look for shoulder flexion, but this time it's actually loaded. We have some body weight in there. So we're letting the shoulders flex. We might walk the hands, slide the hands forwards. We want to feel that we're in control. We can keep the ribs tucked in. We could take a couple of breaths there. Feels good. Push outwards with the hands. Keep those shoulders awake while we go into that loaded shoulder flexion. And to come out, lift the body weight, let everything swing forwards a little, and then walk the hands back. And again, I want you to repeat this a couple of times in your own time. When you travel forwards, find that sweet spot. Take 2 or 3 breaths when you're out there. But each time, I just want you to change the hand position. Maybe go a little bit wider on the first one. See how that feels. Maybe the next one go a little bit narrower than the shoulders and see how that feels. So, keep the hips over the knees. Walk the hands out. I'm going to go a little wider. I'm going to actually go slightly wider than my mat. Feels different. I'm going to push outwards to keep the shoulders active, and I'm thinking of keeping those lower ribs tucked into the body, just so we don't get this where we get a sagginess. We want to keep the ribs contained. Push outwards with the hands. Keep the shoulders strong. Breath in, lift the body, walk the hands back. Now, nothing wrong with that, letting that extension into the back, but for the purpose of today, we want to get this into the shoulders. We want to know that this is how far our shoulders will go without going into that extension in the back. So I'm going to go again. This time I'm going to bring my hands closer together. You might be going a little quicker than this. I'm taking it quite steady today. So I brought the hands so that the thumbs actually touch. Push outwards. Keep the ribs contained. Whew. Feels very different there with the hands closer together. A couple of breaths. Now the body weight shifts forward and walk the hands back. So you might have just a couple more repetitions of that. But it's like moving the hands, just working those shoulders slightly differently. You know, we'll probably find we do have a sweet spot. There's a point where we go, yep, that feels really good, feels comfortable. We'll probably hang out there, not all day, but for an extended period of time. So make the one that you're on, you've gone out for another one, your last one, and when you come back, we're going to grab a couple of blocks and we're going to go take this a little bit deeper. Two blocks. I put them at a slight angle because I'm going to put the elbows on them, but I want the arms to, so that the hands will come towards each other, so you make that V. So you want the blocks in that V shape. If you haven't got blocks, you can go straight onto the floor. You don't have to have the blocks. I just think if you've not got blocks and you're using Tupperware tub, that's not going to be a good thing to lean on. You can do this straight onto the floor. That's absolutely fine. So, on the blocks. If you're on the blocks, make sure that you go about a third of the way up the blocks, because we are going to bend the arms, and if you're too close to the end, you'll fall on. Bring the hands together. I lightly interlace the fingers, but leave the palms of the hands open. Now here, again, ribs stay contained. We're actually going to move the legs back. So then we can swing into the space of the shoulders. So we're looking for that shoulder flexion again. push downwards with the elbows, and then imagine you're trying to pull the hands apart. So it strengthens up through those shoulders. Keep the ribs contained. Now here, could you lift the hands? So the knuckles, or you might have the hands in prayer with the thumbs crossed, pulling the hands apart, that's fine. Could you take the knuckles or the fingertips towards the ceiling? Could you bring the thumbs all the way over towards the back of the neck? Keep the ribs contained. Push down and out, downwards through the elbows, downwards. Then release the hands. Walk the knees forwards, let the body weight move forward. Woo. We have shoulders again. So from here, we are going to bring ourselves back into a plank. We're going to have a little play with this now. If you can go onto the wrists, fab. With this flat hand, that knuckled position, not as good for the move that we're going to do here. Flat hand or elbows, because you can do this from the elbows as well. But I promised you a little bit more plank, so that's where we've got to. We're actually going to play with that now. So we're going to play with moving the shoulders with shoulder mobility while we have plank working towards down dog. Hands under the shoulders, push the floor away, rip that mat into armpits of power. Take one leg back. Take the other leg back. Keep those ribs contained. Can you swing back? You can bend the knees. Think of this, it's about the shoulders. Keep the ribs contained. How do the shoulders feel? Keep pushing outwards through the hands. Swing forwards. Keep pushing the floor away. Back to plank. And then swing back. And you might do one rep and go, "Ooh, must rest," and that's fine. You rest. Rest the wrist. Do what you need to. You can always come back in. Go again. You might find that you could do several repetitions here, but think of all of those pointers. Are the ribs staying contained? Are you pushing the floor away? Are you pushing outwards through the hands? Trying to rip that mat in two. And then gently lower the knees. Fin flicks, release the wrists. And then that snaky thing with the wrists. We are going to go from the elbows this time. We're going to change it up a little. You might have chosen to go from the elbows the first time, that's fine. We're just going to you'll repeat, but we're going onto the elbows. If you go, I'd rather do it off the wrists, that's okay again here too. This space is for play for this, so you choose what works, what's working for you today. So we're going to come onto the elbows. I'm changing it up, variety more than anything. No, sometimes it's good to mix things up. So elbows down. I'm going to interlock the fingers and I push down through the elbows, and imagine I'm trying to pull, like I'm trying to pull the fingers apart. And push the floor away, like you're trying to push the elbows down and then pull the fingers apart. Armpits of power. Now with this, you can start on the knees, let the body weight swing forwards a little, and then we swing it back. Maybe you have to slide the knees back, try to keep the hips over the knees, swing through, keep the ribs contained, and then swing forwards. Often requires a little bit of shuffling on the knees to get just the right position. So more of a dolphin where we swing through, travel forward, keep the ribs contained. So again, sneaky call while working those shoulders, mobilizing, strengthening through the shoulders and the shoulder pivot. then you have option here, and you can turn the toes under, shorten the base a little, turn the toes under. You might want to swing forward, push down through the elbows, pull out through the, might be separating the fingers. Travel forwards, keep breathing, make sure you can breathe throughout, you should be able to hold a conversation. And as you swing back, keep the ribs contained. Could you lift the knees a little, or a lot? Could you swing forwards with the knees lifted? Could you straighten the legs? Could you make the move with the legs straight? Give you a little bit of space to play with that. See what feels right for you. Listen to your body. Make sure you can breathe. If you've started to really hold the breath and you can't bring the breath back, you may be asking a little bit too much. So find what works for you. That might be on the wrists, that might be on the elbows. Now, it might be a small travel forwards, it might be quite a big one, it might be a small travel backwards, it might be quite big. Find what works for your body. Remember, challenge, but never discomfort. We're honouring our bodies while we're thinking about helping the longevity of movement in the body. Quick drink for me. Or you maybe do one more. And then wherever you are in that, lower the knees. We're looking for a child's pose. If your knees don't like that much compression, don't like that child's pose, you're protecting your lower back. Well, if your knees don't like it, come onto your front. Sorry, I rushed ahead there. If your knees don't like this position, come onto your front. And just lie in your front, that's absolutely fine. If you find knees and hips are happy with this, but the lower back can be a little icky, you can bring in the blocks. Rest the forehead on the blocks. You can bring your hands in, one potato, two potato. But we're finding out a space where we can start to let ourselves slow down a little. You know, we're coming out of movement. You know, we're going to come into stillness. But we're giving our body this chance to kind of go, oh. Yeah, hopefully in child's pose. We can breathe into that space between the shoulder blades. Or even if we're on our front, we're going to send the breath into that space between the shoulder blades. The breath in creates space there, and the breath out, allow, release. And that breath out is a natural release. So, whew, let that release melt, that space between the shoulders and all the way out into the shoulder. Very gently from here, from whether it's child pose or on your front, in your own time. Obviously if you're in child pose, you're going to lift yourself away from that position a little. If you're on your front, you can just roll over if you wish, because that's where we're going to come onto our backs. If you want socks, jumpers, just like you need an extra layer on when you know that we're going to come into this non-movement, feel free to grab them. And then we're going to settle ourselves onto our back. We've just got one thing that we're going to do here before we go into that final non-movement, that final relaxation. So I want you to give yourself a hug and then gently rock side to side on that space between the shoulder blades. Now, if you find that laying on your back, you kind of go, that's really not for me, I'd much rather not. Some bodies don't like that. You can do this at seated. And give yourself a hug, just a little rock. Side to side, but think of the rocking through that upper back, not a great big. It's a little on, just moving those elbows, just a little from side to side. So whether you're seated or laying, and then we're going to uncross the arms and recross. Same thing. A little rock. If you're laid down, you get that nice sensation of the massage from the floor on that space between the shoulder blades. Let that release. One last thing. So what I want you to do here, whether you're seated or on the floor, I'm going to do it seated, you can do this on the floor. So we're going to bring the arms into that cactus position. And we're going to see how far back can we let the hands fall. So we're going to get a little bit of stretch here in the front of the chest. If we're laid down, it's like all the hands go back towards the floor. You're going to feel that little bit of opening, that stretch in the front of the chest. If we're seated, we're keeping the ribs down. We're just thinking, can we find a little bit of stretch in the front of the shoulders? We'll lay down. If the hands go all the way back to the floor, you might choose to start to slide the arms a little bit higher, keeping the elbows and the backs of the hands on the floor. So we get that stretch through that upper chest, front part of the shoulder. And we keep the ribs down, whether we're seated or laying. And then from there, release the arms. Now to move into non-movement. The choice here is yours. You can lay on your back, go classical, legs lengthened, arms away from the sides. That might feel perfect. You might go, laying on my back, it's not for me. You might want to side lie. And then if you've got blocks or pillows, you might a block for the head, one for the knees, or if it's pillow, you've got some pillows there. Pillow for the head between the knees. You might like to finish your class seated, and that's fine. You just find a comfortable seated position. But we're thinking non-movement. We want a position where we can settle and not move. After all of that movement, after all of that kind of expecting of the body and asking of the body, we now come into non-movement, stillness, rest, relaxation. We give ourselves space to settle into our chosen position. We notice any sensations in the body. Take a swallow. And again, be aware of the breath. Use the sensations of the body and the awareness of the breath to anchor us in the present moment. As you breathe out, feel that natural release. Now we exhale, there's a natural release. Almost lean into that release and release everything. Release physically, aim to release mentally, release everything. Don't hold on to anything. Release. And as you release, trust the universe will take anything that is no longer serving you. So we don't have to name that, because all we have to do is release everything. The universe knows what we no longer need. It will move that on for us. But the breath is a cycle. So we have the inhale. And the inhale creates space within us. And that's space to receive. So trust that in that inhale, the universe is returning anything that you need, old or new. That is the space. The inhale is the space to receive those things, to receive old and new things with new possibilities and fresh potential. So the breath is a cycle. We put our trust in the universe, we release. We trust that the universe will take what is no longer serving. On the flip side of that cycle, as we inhale, we trust that the universe will send back whatever we do need. But here in this rest, this is where we can offer that cycle of release and receive. Allow the body to rest. Allow the mind to rest. And know that the breath is creating that cycle of release and receive. I want you to deepen the breath. And then lengthen the exhale. Deepen the breath. Lengthen the exhale. Three more of those. Deepen the breath. Lengthen the exhale. to the end of that third exhale. Allow the breathing to find its own natural pace. Become aware of the hands and the feet. Wriggle the fingers, wriggle the toes. And allow movement back into the body as quickly or as slowly as feels right for you, as much or as little. Listen to what the body asks for here as we bring movement back. Might be a big stretch. Oh, might be curling to a ball. The body might ask to sideline. If you've been laid on your back, it might ask to roll onto the side. If you're seated, you might just want some wriggling, just some movement. Might want you to change the leg position. But this movement is, if we're not already seated, is preparing us for the transition to seated. We're going to bring ourselves to seated, sit however we're comfortable. Reconnect to the breath. Think of breath energy. Breath in. We draw energy from below. We create lift, levity and support through the body. With that inhale. Exhale doesn't take away that, it adds to it. A sense of release, ease and grounding. As it feels right for you. Hand position. We can keep the hands where they are if you wish. You can bring them to prayer. You can place them on the chest. As we move into the space for thank yous. Yeah. Thank you, self, for bringing the body to this practice today. Thank you, self and body, for the movement practice, for the non-movement practice, both equally as important. Thank you, self and body, for all that you are and all that you do, all that you've done, all that you've been, and for all of the possibilities and potential that you still hold. And then I want you to say those words. You say them inwardly and you say them repeatedly in this section. You say to yourself, I am amazing. And you say it to the whole, the confident parts and the parts that hold self down. But you say it to the whole. And you keep saying it. And as you say it, seal it in with this knowing. We are all amazing. We exist in this ever-expanding universe. How could we not be amazing? Really let that settle in. And as you let that settle in, maybe a physical heart rub to help that settle in, maybe a mental heart rub. But a heart rub, let that settle in. 3 more breaths. You get to the end of that third exhale, release that hands. If the eyes were closed, blink them open. If the gaze was down, lift the gaze. Let the body move. It leaves me to say thank you for sharing time, the greater space and practice with me today. And I look forward to doing it again soon, hopefully. Thank you. Bye. Enjoy the rest of your day.